School bullies attacked him for being black, not knowing he's the Mafia boss's son. The mashed potatoes slid down his jacket like paint dripping off a wall. Jamal King didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He didn't even look up right away. He simply sat there at the edge of the cafeteria, alone, his tray flipped over, gravy soaking into the sleeve of his hoodie. Across the table, Blake Tanner, the golden boy of Oak Ridge Academy, stood smirking, flanked by his usual entourage of loud, privileged jackals. Their laughter filled the air like a punchline everyone had been waiting for. Around them, students turned to watch, whispering but not stepping in. They knew better. No one crossed Blake. No one defended the target, and that's what Jamal was now, a target. Blake leaned closer, hands pressed against the table, voice just loud enough to carry. "You gonna clean that up, King? Or do you expect your daddy to send someone?" Jamal slowly looked up, and for the first time, their eyes locked. Not anger, not fear, just something cold and unbothered. Something ancient. Blake's smile faltered for half a second. Just half. But it was enough for his laughter to stop dead in his throat. The noise in the cafeteria suddenly felt too loud, too forced. Something in Jamal's stillness didn't make sense. And that was the moment it all began to unravel. 3 weeks earlier, when Jamal first stepped through the towering glass doors of Oak Ridge Academy, no one knew who he was. He wore no flashy brands, no chains, no noise. Just a plain black hoodie, sneakers, and jeans. His backpack looked worn, but the way he carried himself didn't match the outfit. He moved through the hallway like he'd been there before. Like he'd built the place. He didn't look around nervously or shrink under stares. He didn't try to make friends. He didn't try to hide either. He just existed, with a presence that unsettled people without them knowing why. Oak Ridge was the kind of place where bloodlines mattered more than GPA. The children of judges, CEOs, and congressmen filled its halls, pretending to care about SATs while bribing their way through the back doors of Ivy League schools. Blake Tanner had ruled Oak Ridge since sophomore year. Tall, athletic, charismatic in that fake politician way, he was everything the administration adored. And he knew it. He wielded that power like a sword, cutting down anyone who didn't play his game. So when a quiet black kid showed up with no visible backing, no legacy status, and no clique, Blake saw an opportunity. Someone to remind the school of the pecking order, someone to entertain his friends, someone expendable. The first strike came fast. In gym class, Blake accidentally bumped Jamal hard enough to knock him to the ground. No apology. Just a smirk and a loud joke to his friends. "Careful, new guy. We don't want a lawsuit." Jamal got up. No words. No expression. Just dusted off his knees and jogged off toward the lockers. That annoyed Blake. Most kids got angry. Some cried. The best ones tried to fight. But Jamal? He treated the whole thing like it didn't happen, like Blake didn't exist. The next day, Blake confused Jamal's locker with his own and dumped an open milk carton inside. Jamal wiped it down, replaced his books, and walked to class without saying a word. By Friday, Blake escalated. He had his techie friend Andrew doctor a photo of Jamal, make it look like he was caught stealing from the chemistry lab. They slipped it into the school group chat under the title, "Guess Who's on Probation Already?" Laughter followed. Snickering. Side eyes in the hallway, but Jamal kept walking, always calm. Always silent. That silence. It started to mess with Blake's head. One evening, Blake found himself staring at Jamal's name on the class roster, something about it bothering him. The name didn't ring any bells, no famous donors, no alumni links. Nothing. He even asked his dad during dinner, "You ever heard of anyone named Kingman in the city?" His father, Senator Mark Tanner, froze for a second before sipping his wine. Why? No reason. Just some kid at school. The senator didn't respond, but he didn't take another bite for a while. Back at school, Blake doubled down. He made sure Jamal's homework mysteriously disappeared from the teacher's inbox, had his friends tag him in mocking memes, threw subtle racist jokes that were just vague enough to avoid disciplinary action. Still, Jamal said nothing, reacted to nothing. But today, when Blake dumped that tray of food, he expected a response. Instead, he got silence, and that silence was deafening. Jamal stood slowly. He didn't brush off the mashed potatoes. He didn't wipe his jacket. He looked at Blake once briefly and walked away. No limp, no shame, just left the cafeteria as if he were done with it. Blake laughed too loud to cover the unease building in his chest. What? Gonna run to the principal, King? He shouted after him. Tell your poor mom the rich kids were mean? Jamal paused at the doorway, still facing away. He didn't turn around, didn't make a scene. But he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small white card, and slid it onto the tray-filled table before walking out. The table went quiet. Andrew leaned over and read it. Then went pale. What does it say? Blake asked. Andrew swallowed. It's blank. Just a chess piece on one side. A black king? No words, no number, Blake scoffed. So? What is he? Into board games now? But something about Andrew's face kept gnawing at him. The nerd didn't scare easy. I've seen that before, Andrew muttered. Where? My uncle's in the NYPD. That card showed up after the Anderson trial, when the key witness changed his story and the charges got dropped. Same exact symbol. No name. Just the king. Blake's face drained of color. Later that evening, Jamal sat alone at a long, dimly lit dining table in a quiet penthouse overlooking the city skyline. Across from him sat a man with steel-gray hair and the posture of someone who'd never needed to raise his voice to command attention. Leonard Kingman sipped his bourbon, eyes never leaving his son. They know yet? He asked. Jamal shook his head. Not really. Just starting to guess. You want me to end it? Jamal stared out the window. Not yet. I want them to keep playing. People reveal their true faces when they think they're in control. His father chuckled low. Your mother would have hated this. She always wanted me to finish school the normal way, Jamal replied. But normal doesn't work for people like us. Leonard leaned back, a smile flickering across his face. Just don't get too soft. You're not here to make friends. I'm not here to make noise either, Jamal said. I'm here to make sure the right ones shut up. Silence settled between them. Heavy, final. At Oak Ridge, the whispers had already begun. Students were starting to ask, who is Jamal King? Where did he come from? Why does no one know anything about his family? And Blake? He'd find out soon enough that some games you can't win. Some pieces, once touched, reset the board completely. The Monday after the cafeteria incident, Oak Ridge felt different. Not for everyone, of course. The kids with silver spoons and last names stitched into dormitory buildings still strutted the halls like they owned them. But for those who watched, really watched, there was a shift, a hush, like the air had thickened, heavy with something unspoken. Blake Tanner tried to walk the same way he always did, his varsity jacket slung over his shoulder like some royal banner. He high-fived two of his boys, tossed a joke about the substitute math teacher's breath, and laughed louder than necessary. But there was something off about him. His steps weren't as confident. His eyes darted around too much. He kept looking for someone without making it obvious. Jamal wasn't in sight, which somehow made it worse. In homeroom when Mrs. Callahan took attendance, Jamal's name was called, and a quiet voice from the back answered, "Here." Blake turned. Jamal sat near the window, hoodie pulled halfway over his head, eyes on a thick notebook open in front of him. He didn't look at Blake. He didn't even glance up, just scribbled something with that same eerie calm. That annoyed Blake more than he could explain. He wanted a reaction, a glare, even a fake smile. Anything but that indifference. During second period, rumors spread like wildfire. Someone said Jamal was related to a judge. Another swore they saw a guy in a black suit picking him up in a matte Range Rover last week. Someone from the debate team whispered that Jamal had declined to join, saying, "I don't argue, I end things." By lunch, Blake was boiling. He leaned over to Andrew at their usual table. "Find out who he is, full name, address, whatever. I want to know where this guy crawled out from." Andrew hesitated. "I already tried. His school file's been flagged." "Administrative override." Blake blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means someone upstairs doesn't want his info accessed. Not even the registrar can open it." "It's like classified or something." Blake's jaw tightened. "That's not a thing. Not in a high school." Andrew lowered his voice. "It is when the guy you're messing with might be federal." Blake scoffed. "He's a kid. No way he's anything." Andrew glanced around before muttering, "I think it's who his father is that matters." That shut Blake up. Meanwhile, Jamal walked through the halls like a shadow in daylight. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He didn't join any clubs, didn't eat with anyone. But what scared people more was how he noticed everything. He didn't need to talk to anyone to know everything going on. Who was cheating? Who was sleeping with whose sister? Which teachers were drinking from their thermoses? His silence collected power. On Wednesday, Ms. Medina called him aside after literature class. She was the youngest teacher on staff. Fresh out of Columbia, one of the few black faculty members in the entire school. She'd been watching Jamal from day one, not out of suspicion, but because she recognized something in his eyes. "You all right?" she asked, leaning against her desk as the class filtered out. Jamal shrugged. "Define all right." She smiled. "Fair. Let me try again. Do you feel safe here?" Jamal looked up, finally making eye contact. "Safety's a privilege, not a guarantee." Ms. Medina frowned. "You don't have to fight alone." "I'm not fighting," Jamal said quietly. "Not yet." He turned to leave, but she stopped him. "If you ever need someone, just know you've got eyes here that see past the surface." Jamal paused for half a second, then nodded once and walked out. That afternoon, Blake's friend Chase decided to take matters into his own hands. He cornered Jamal behind the gym, phone out, recording. "Say something, tough guy. Let's see that attitude now." Jamal didn't speak. He stared at the phone, then at Chase. "Camera's rolling, bro," Chase sneered. "What now?" Jamal stepped forward, just once. Chase flinched and stumbled back, dropping his phone. Jamal picked it up, pressed stop, and handed it back. Then he said one word. "Run." Chase didn't hesitate. He ran. The next morning, a photo appeared on the student message board. It showed Chase, shirtless, crying, smeared with mud, kneeling in front of a graffiti wall that read, "Respect isn't given. It's earned." Nobody knew who posted it. Chase refused to talk. By Friday, a new rumor had replaced the old ones. Not about who Jamal was, but what would happen to anyone who crossed him. Someone claimed Jamal's dad once made a state witness disappear during a corruption trial. Another said there was an entire warehouse full of men who cleaned up problems for the Kingman family. Of course, most of it sounded like fantasy, but nobody wanted to test it. In the staff lounge, Principal Howard poured himself a coffee while reading a message on his encrypted tablet. He tapped the edge nervously, then turned to his vice principal. "Has anyone filed anything about that King boy yet? Jamal? No. Not a single complaint." "Keep it that way," Howard said flatly. "We don't touch him. Ever." "Why? Is he—" "You don't want to know," the principal said, walking away. That night, Blake received an envelope on his front porch. No stamp. No name. Inside was a photo of him laughing in the cafeteria, mid-mockery. Behind him, out of focus but unmistakable, Jamal was looking straight into the camera. On the back of the photo was written, "Your father's donors won't save you. Be careful who you try to bury. They might already be deeper than you can reach." Blake dropped the photo. His hands were shaking. Something was happening, and he had no idea how to stop it. The walls of Oak Ridge Academy had never felt like they were closing in before, but for Blake Tanner, every hallway started to feel narrower. Every laugh behind his back felt louder. Every look from passing students felt like it lasted a second too long. He told himself it was paranoia, that Jamal King was just a kid with a chip on his shoulder and a talent for playing the victim. But deep down, something was cracking. He'd never had to worry before. Power had always been easy. His father was a state senator, his mom chaired a powerful education nonprofit, and his last name was enough to open doors most kids didn't even know existed. At Oak Ridge, Blake didn't need to be the smartest or the kindest. He just had to be seen. But now someone else was being seen, someone no one even dared to speak to. On Monday, Blake entered the main lobby with his usual swagger, only to be met with an unexpected silence. A group of juniors huddled around one phone, whispering. He pushed past them. "What's going on?" One of them looked up and hesitated before showing the screen. It was footage from the alley behind the gym. The same confrontation Chase had started last week. Only now it was edited, with dramatic music and grainy black and white filters. Chase's shaky voice stammered on camera, Jamal's calm eyes focused like a sniper, and then the now infamous moment where Jamal told him to run. The final frame was a black screen with a message. "Respect is earned. Oak Ridge, stay woke." Posted anonymously. Already over 1,000 views. Blake clenched his jaw. This is getting out of hand. Chase hadn't spoken to anyone since that day. He skipped football practice, deleted his Instagram. He was a ghost. By fourth period, Blake stormed into the media lab. Andrew was at a computer, headphones on, editing video for the school's fall rally. Blake slapped the table. "You're supposed to be my eyes. How the hell is he pulling this off under our noses?" Andrew looked exhausted. "I've tried everything." Back channels, hacked alumni lists, looked up every king in the tri-state area. Jamal King doesn't exist. Not in any public record, no digital footprint before last month. That's not possible. Andrew leaned forward. "It is if someone made it that way." Blake stepped back, pacing. "So what? He's some kind of spy now." "I don't know, but someone wants him here. And someone very powerful is keeping him hidden." That evening, after most of the school emptied out, Jamal sat on a bench near the library. He didn't move much, just watched. A chessboard rested on his lap, the pieces arranged in mid-play. Ms. Medina passed by, noticed the board, and slowed down. "You play?" Jamal looked up. "I think better in pieces." She smiled. "May I?" He gestured to the seat across from him. As she sat, she studied the board. "You're playing both sides?" "For now." "Planning your moves in advance?" "Planning theirs." She moved a pawn forward. "You know, You could tell someone. Jamal looked at her, eyes steady. I could, but then I'd be asking permission. She tilted her head. And you don't do that? He shook his head. Not when I already know how it ends. They sat in silence for a while, exchanging quiet moves. Then Ms. Medina whispered, There are people here who don't want to see someone like you rise. I know, Jamal said. But that's the thing about rising. He moved his knight, capturing her queen. They never see it until it's already happened. Back at the Tanner residence that night, Blake's father stood in his study, holding a single photograph. A surveillance still. Jamal, walking alone outside Oak Ridge. 2 men in black standing not far behind him. Blake entered, shoulders tense. Dad, I need help. The senator turned slowly. You've made a mess. This isn't just some kid. He's got people. I know who he is, his father said coldly. I've known since the day his file hit our district school board. Blake blinked. What? You think the Kingman name is just a rumor? The senator poured a glass of scotch. Leonard Kingman is real, and he doesn't belong to this world. He owns the one beneath it. Blake felt the blood drain from his face. Why would his son come here? The senator sipped his drink. Because he's watching. Because someone told him Oak Ridge needed cleaning. And because someone like you was foolish enough to hand him the perfect excuse. Blake sat down hard, chest tight. What do I do? His father didn't answer at first, just stared into his glass. Then he said, You pray that he hasn't decided to act yet. The next morning, Blake arrived at school early, eyes scanning the halls. He found Jamal in the courtyard, sitting alone again. The same calm posture. The same unreadable face. Blake walked up slowly, uncertain. Jamal didn't look up. Blake hesitated. What do you want? Jamal's voice was quiet. From you? Nothing. Then why are you doing this? Finally, Jamal looked at him. I'm not doing anything. Blake opened his mouth, then closed it again. His throat was dry. Look, if this is about what happened... Jamal cut him off. You think this started with mashed potatoes? You think this is about a tray and a cafeteria joke? Blake stepped back slightly. Jamal leaned forward, voice still calm. You built your kingdom on fear, but fear only works on people who have something to lose. Blake swallowed hard. And you don't? Jamal smiled, just barely. I've already lost more than you can imagine, which means I don't play by your rules. Then he stood, brushing past Blake like he didn't exist. As he walked away, Blake noticed something on the bench where Jamal had been sitting. A black pawn, standing alone on the chessboard, with a queen and 2 bishops already gone. Check was coming, and this time, Blake wouldn't see it until it was far too late. The knock on the door was soft, but it was enough to make Leonard Kingman look up from the briefing folder in his hands. Jamal stepped into the room without waiting for an invitation, his face unreadable as always. You wanted to see me? He asked. Leonard motioned toward the chair across the table. Sit. The penthouse office was dimly lit, like everything in Leonard's life, controlled, precise, deliberate. One wall held nothing but monitors, news feeds, school security cams, and grainy footage from traffic lights 2 blocks from Oak Ridge Academy. Nothing escaped this room. Jamal sat down. The silence between them stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable. Leonard finally spoke. Blake Tanner is spiraling. His father's press secretary just called to request a private conversation. Very politely, I might add. Jamal didn't flinch. He knows. He suspects, but he's still trying to convince himself he can fix this without consequences. He's wrong. Leonard smiled faintly. Yes, he is, but I didn't call you here to discuss Blake. Jamal tilted his head. Then what? Leonard leaned forward, fingers steepled. You've been careful, calculated. But now you're in the open. The school knows your name. The city's political families are whispering. That anonymity you've been hiding behind. It's gone. Jamal met his gaze. It was never meant to last. Leonard studied him, the way a general studies a soldier right before a war. You're not me, Jamal, but if you want to carry this out, if you want to expose what Oak Ridge really is, then you'll need to accept what comes next. No more passive plays. No more half measures. I know. No, Leonard said, voice sharper now. You think you know, but if you go further, people will get hurt. Lives will be ruined. Are you prepared for that? Jamal didn't blink. They already hurt people. I'm just shining a light on it. Leonard sat back, nodding slowly. Then do it properly. I'll authorize one resource. Jamal raised an eyebrow. Who? Her name's Elise. She's embedded at the district attorney's office. Used to be a journalist. Sharp as hell. She owes me a favor. Jamal took a breath. I'll handle it. No, Leonard said, almost too quietly. You'll lead it. That's a different thing. Jamal stood. I understand. As he turned to leave, Leonard added, one more thing. Jamal paused. Leonard's tone shifted, lower, more personal. Your mother would have hated this. Jamal turned his head slightly, just enough to show he'd heard. But he didn't respond. That same evening, a document packet was slid under the dorm room door of a junior named Naomi Green, Oak Ridge's top journalism student. She was black, smart, relentless. The envelope had no name, no return address, just a flash drive and a note. Truth has a cost. You still willing to pay it? She plugged it into her laptop without hesitation. Inside was a treasure trove. Surveillance footage of Blake's friends planting drugs in a student's locker, screenshots of group chats filled with racial slurs, teacher emails laughing about diversity hires. It was all time-stamped, verified, undeniable. Naomi's heart pounded. She'd always known Oak Ridge wasn't what it claimed to be. But this was proof. And someone was feeding it to her. The next day, she skipped class, met Jamal behind the gym, her eyes sharp, her voice direct. You? Jamal didn't answer. Naomi crossed her arms. Why me? You're the only one I know who'll print what matters. You could have gone public yourself. No, then I become the story. I need someone who doesn't look like a threat until it's too late. She studied him. And what's your angle? Jamal looked away, his voice quieter. Justice. Naomi was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. All right, but if I do this, I don't pull punches. If your name shows up in these files, I print it. Do what you have to. By Friday, Blake found himself sitting outside the headmaster's office, sweating through his shirt. A copy of the Oak Ridge Observer, the student paper, sat on the table next to him. The front page headline read, Oak Ridge Exposed, Racism, Corruption, and Cover-Ups. Underneath was a blurry black and white photo of Blake's hand shoving Jamal's tray in the cafeteria. He picked up the paper, but his hands were shaking too much to hold it steady. The office door creaked open. Principal Howard stood there, jaw tight. Come in. Blake stepped inside. His father was already seated, arms crossed, red in the face. The principal placed a folder on the table. You've been accused of harassment, racial discrimination, tampering with academic records, and conspiracy. Blake's voice cracked. It wasn't, this is out of context. Someone's framing me. His father didn't speak. He just stared at his son, disappointment radiating from him like heat off concrete. The principal opened the folder. There's video. There are messages. There's witness testimony. You will be suspended indefinitely pending review by the school board. I suggest you get ahead of this, or the district attorney might be calling next. Blake's heart dropped. Wait, what? You're saying this is criminal? Not yet, Howard said flatly, but give it time. Outside, Jamal watched from the far end of the hallway. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply turned and walked away. This wasn't revenge. It was just step one. Blake Tanner sat in the back seat of his father's Range Rover, staring out the tinted window as the school shrank behind him. His suspension was official. His name was printed all over the student paper, his face burned into hallway whispers, and now his father wouldn't even look at him. Mark Tanner's hands were tight on the steering wheel, his jaw locked. He hadn't said a word since Blake got in. Not even when the principal handed over the folder of evidence. Not when the headmaster said the words, pending criminal referral. Not even when Blake tried to plead, Dad, you don't understand. And now, with the silence pressing between them like a third passenger, Blake's stomach churned with something unfamiliar. Real fear. At home, he was told to stay in his room, no media, no phone. His father took his laptop and warned him, "One more headline and I'll make sure you're homeschooled in Utah." Blake didn't even argue. For once, the fight had drained out of him, but fear doesn't wait for silence to fade. It grows inside it. That night, Blake woke up to find an envelope slid under his bedroom door. Thick black paper. No writing on the outside. Just a single playing card inside. A black king, burned slightly around the edges. The message on the back was scrawled in ink so dark it bled through. The board resets when the pieces get too proud. His hands shook as he dropped the card. For the first time in his life, Blake understood what it meant to be outmatched, not just by someone smarter, but by someone who never wanted attention in the first place. Meanwhile, back at Oak Ridge, Jamal stood under the floodlights of the empty football field. Naomi met him there, backpack slung over one shoulder, her breath visible in the cold night air. "You sure about this?" she asked, holding up a flash drive. "This one has everything. Financial aid fraud. Fake grades, teachers on the payroll, even the school board's kickbacks." Jamal nodded. "We leak it." Naomi hesitated. "This could bury Oak Ridge." "Then maybe it deserves to be buried." She bit her lip. "And what about you? You think people won't figure out who's behind all this?" "They'll figure it out eventually," Jamal said, "but I'm not hiding anymore." She watched him a moment, then asked the question that had been gnawing at her since day one. "Why this school, Jamal? Why Oak Ridge?" He looked up at the towering scoreboard, its bulbs flickering. "Because this is where they feel safest, where they think their rules are untouchable. If I expose them here, the ripples won't stop at the gates." Naomi nodded slowly, then slipped the flash drive into her coat pocket. "You're not just fighting bullies, are you?" Jamal's answer was soft. "I'm fighting the people who taught them how to be bullies." At the Tanner estate, panic was setting in. Mark Tanner stood in his study, speaking urgently on the phone. "I don't care what you have to do. Shut it down. Call in favors. We've protected bigger scandals than this." His aide's voice crackled through the speaker. "Sir, it's not just a leak. There's a narrative forming. The media's already reaching out to the school board. Your son's name is trending locally." Mark slammed his fist against the desk. Find out who's behind this. There's chatter about someone named Kingman. Do you want me to dig? The line went silent for a beat. No, Mark said finally, voice low. You don't touch that name. But, sir. I said no, Mark snapped, his voice suddenly hollow. You don't go near them unless you're ready to burn everything you've ever built. Back at school, the fallout had begun. The senior class president was removed after Naomi's article exposed she had been blackmailing students for campaign votes. 2 teachers were placed on leave. The head of admissions resigned before the board could vote him out. And students were whispering, not just about the scandal, but about Jamal. Some swore he had federal protection. Others said he hacked the school system himself. A few believed he was part of a secret society that punished racist institutions. But no one really knew, and that's what made them afraid. Medina called Jamal into her office that afternoon. She looked tired but proud, eyes red from what he assumed were late-night meetings. You're not subtle anymore, she said. Wasn't trying to be. She motioned for him to sit. The board knows it's you. They just can't prove it yet. They're panicking. I want them to. She studied him. You're playing a dangerous game. They have money. Power. Friends in high places. I've got something better, Jamal said. What's that? Nothing left to lose. Medina paused, letting that hang in the air. Your mother would have wanted peace, she said gently. Jamal's face didn't change. She also wanted truth. Medina leaned back in her chair. Be careful, Jamal. You're not just changing the school anymore. You're shaking the people who built it. That night, a car waited outside the school. Sleek, black, government plates. Jamal stepped inside. Leonard Kingman sat in the back, fingers clasped around a glass of scotch. You're accelerating the timeline, his father said, not looking up. Jamal replied, They escalated first. Leonard turned his gaze to his son. You think you're ready? I know I am. Leonard studied him a moment longer, then nodded. Then the next move is yours. As the car pulled into the dark, Jamal leaned back, eyes focused on the reflection of the school gates in the window. The storm wasn't coming. It had already begun. It was a gray Thursday morning when the fire alarm went off at Oak Ridge Academy. The shrill, high-pitched blare cut through the hallways like a blade, and for a moment, nobody moved. Then the scramble began. Students poured out of classrooms, teachers grabbed their emergency folders, and the courtyard buzzed with chaos. But Jamal wasn't in the crowd. He stood at the far edge of the science building, where an emergency exit door clicked shut softly behind him. He didn't run. He didn't have to. Everything was unfolding exactly the way it had been planned. 2 weeks ago, he had intercepted a call from the admissions office. The number traced back to a private equity firm, one that quietly donated hundreds of thousands to Oak Ridge every year. And deeper still, he found something more disturbing. A list. Names, dates, family ties. A protected inner circle of legacy students whose grades were altered, scholarships forged, and disciplinary records wiped clean. Blake Tanner's name was on it. So was the headmaster's niece. And 5 others. Jamal had sent Naomi the files the night before, labeled simply, The Foundation. Now it was time for Phase 2. He made his way through the narrow back hall that led to the admin wing. Ms. Medina was already waiting near the file room, holding a visitor's badge and a campus map like she was just another lost faculty member. She didn't speak, just nodded and turned the corner to act as lookout. Jamal slid a USB stick into the master access terminal inside the server closet. The LED blinked red, then green. Across campus, every computer on the school's network lit up. Offices, classrooms, teacher lounges, all flashing one message. Every system built on lies eventually collapses. By the time Principal Howard returned from the evacuation point, his email inbox had been dumped online. Faculty chat logs were leaking in real time. Screenshots of racist remarks, secret payoffs, and donor-fueled manipulation scrolled endlessly on student phones. Panic spread like wildfire. Inside the Tanner estate, Senator Mark Tanner stood in front of his television, watching live coverage of the Oak Ridge data breach. A local anchor reported that the school was under investigation. One of the victims interviewed anonymously said her sexual assault report had been buried by administration to protect a legacy athlete. The screen flashed a blurry yearbook photo of Blake. Mark grabbed the remote and hurled it at the wall. "This kid doesn't want justice," he growled. "He wants to burn the whole system down." His wife, pale and speechless, whispered, "What if he can?" Back at school, the reaction was swift and ugly. Blake's father called the board, threatening to sue the institution for negligence. 2 legacy families pulled their kids out of Oak Ridge by noon. A SWAT-style IT team swept through the servers. And still, they couldn't stop the leaks. Because the source wasn't external. Jamal had written the code himself, embedded in a decoy email weeks earlier. The virus was slow, silent, and devastating. Like he'd been. Blake returned to campus unannounced that afternoon. His suspension hadn't been lifted, but nobody stopped him, not even security. They just looked away. He found Jamal alone in the library, seated beneath a tall window, flipping through a tattered copy of The Prince. "Are you enjoying this?" Blake asked, his voice cracked but angry. "You proud of what you've done?" Jamal didn't look up. "No." Blake stepped closer. "You think this makes you a hero? You're destroying people." "Families. People destroy themselves," Jamal said calmly. "I just gave them a mirror." Blake's eyes flared. "I could have ruined your life. You tried." There was a beat of silence. Blake's voice dropped. "My dad's talking about legal action. He says your family won't survive what's coming." Jamal finally looked at him, expression flat. "Your dad still thinks this is about you." Blake froze. Jamal stood slowly. "He thinks I'm a high schooler playing games. But the truth is, I was never playing." A soft thump echoed behind them. Blake turned to see 2 men in tailored black suits step through the library's far entrance. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Blake's breath caught. "Who are they?" Jamal walked past him, brushing his shoulder. "Insurance." The next morning, the entire senior class received an anonymous message with a list of names. Students who had cheated. Teachers who had enabled it. Donors who had paid for silence. The email ended with one line. "If you're not part of the problem, now is the time to prove it." By lunchtime, students began staging sit-ins across campus. Teachers resigned mid-period. The headmaster collapsed during a press conference and was rushed to the hospital. Jamal stood on the rooftop of the East Building, watching the chaos below. Naomi joined him, wind catching the edge of her coat. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "You ever watch a dam break?" "Yeah," she said. "But this isn't a flood. It's a reckoning." Jamal didn't smile, but his voice had a new weight. "I thought I'd feel more relieved." "You will," Naomi said. "Just not yet." They stood there in silence, watching Oak Ridge come apart at the seams. Beneath them, Blake Tanner sat alone on the steps, his friends gone, his phone silent, his reputation in ashes. He looked up once, just once, and saw Jamal above him. Their eyes locked. No hate, no revenge. Just understanding. It was over. But for Jamal, it had only just begun. Rain fell hard over Oak Ridge Academy, the kind of storm that seemed to wash away everything. Dirt, guilt, secrets. But some stains don't disappear that easily. Inside the boardroom on the top floor of the administration building, tension thickened like humidity. 8 members of the Oak Ridge School Board sat at the long mahogany table, hands folded, brows tight, eyes flicking between a laptop screen and the man pacing at the head of the room. Senator Mark Tanner. "My son is being crucified," he said, voice measured but simmering underneath. "This school is falling apart. You've lost control." "We didn't leak anything," replied Board Chairwoman Madeline Crane, her voice cold and tight. "Your son did that himself when he assaulted a student on camera." "He was provoked," Mark shot back. "There's no context in those edited clips, and you know it." Another board member cleared his throat. "We're not here to debate guilt. We're here to discuss containment." "There is no containment," Madeline snapped. "The DOJ is watching. So is the State Ethics Committee. They want names." Mark's eyes narrowed. "So now we just throw the kids under the bus?" Madeline leaned in, her voice quiet. "They're not looking at the kids anymore. They're looking at you." "At me. At anyone who knew." Mark Tanner didn't respond, but he didn't need to. The walls were closing in, and every one of them knew it. Across campus, Jamal King walked the quiet, wet corridors of the East Wing. His hoodie was up. His sneakers soaked, but he moved with the same calm he always had. Students passed him, some offering cautious nods. Others simply looked away. He reached the counseling office and knocked once. Naomi opened the door, already mid-call, her voice firm. "Yes, and if your news outlet wants a comment, we'll be issuing a formal press release after the rally. No, I can't confirm anything about faculty suspensions." She hung up and looked at Jamal. "You're late." "I'm not," he replied. She smirked. "That's true." Inside, the walls were covered in printed emails, photos, court filings. Red thread connected certain names. Naomi had turned the room into a war map, and she was winning. "I just got confirmation," she said, eyes flashing. 3 faculty members named in the report have resigned, and you're not going to believe this. Ms. Walker. The old librarian who disappeared last year? She was fired after reporting grade tampering. We got her statement. She's going public. Jamal exhaled through his nose. Good. Naomi leaned against the table. But you should know something else. Someone tried to access your student file again, and this time they weren't subtle. The IP traced back to the state capitol. Jamal raised an eyebrow. His father's reaching. I think he's trying to scare you, or dig up leverage. He won't find any. Naomi walked closer. He doesn't know that. And that's why he's dangerous. Jamal looked at her, voice calm. They were always dangerous. Now they're just desperate. Later that afternoon, Blake stood at the center of a press huddle just outside the school gates. Microphones surrounded him. Reporters shoved closer. His hair was damp from the rain, his voice hoarse. I was young. I made mistakes. I didn't realize how my actions hurt people. And I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to try to make it right. The apology was carefully written, too carefully. A few reporters nodded. Others didn't buy it. Jamal watched from a distance, standing by a tree just out of the frame. Mrs. Medina stood beside him. You believe him? She asked. Jamal didn't answer right away. No, but I believe he's scared. That's not justice. It's a start. Medina turned to him. And what about you? Are you done? Jamal looked out at the media circus, the crumbling reputation of the school, the truth finally dragging itself into the daylight. Not yet. That evening, Principal Howard received an envelope at his home. Inside was a single page, an anonymous letter detailing how he'd doctored athletic records for scholarship quotas. Below it, a note in black ink. You protected the wrong kids. The next morning, his resignation hit every inbox on campus. One by one, the pillars of Oak Ridge collapsed. But the most unexpected twist came not from the school, not from the press, but from within the Tanner family itself. A leaked audio recording landed in Naomi's inbox, an argument between Blake and his father. You made me do this, Blake shouted. You pushed me to be like them. I protected you, Mark hissed. From people like him. No, Blake snapped. You were trying to protect yourself, and now we've both lost everything. Naomi forwarded the file to 3 outlets. Within the hour, Senator Mark Tanner was trending nationwide. As the story broke, Blake was pulled from school entirely. His father went silent. His legal team issued a vague statement about family privacy. Jamal sat alone in the auditorium balcony, looking down at the empty stage where generations of Oak Ridge legacies once gave valedictorian speeches about character and honor. Ms. Medina found him there. You know, most students would just graduate quietly after all this, she said, sitting beside him. Jamal nodded. That's why I won't. She looked at him, proud. So what's next? Jamal leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I don't want to burn everything down, Ms. Medina. I want to rebuild it. You think they'll let you? They don't have a choice anymore. And in that quiet moment, with the rain still tapping gently against the roof, it was clear. Jamal King didn't just change Oak Ridge. He'd broken the rules, then rewritten the game entirely. Graduation day at Oak Ridge Academy arrived not with celebration, but with restraint. The usual parade of champagne flutes, family banners, and over-rehearsed speeches had been stripped down to a bare ceremony on the soccer field. The stage was smaller, the crowd thinner. The energy, tense. For the first time in the school's history, media crews weren't allowed in. Too much heat. Too many questions. Too many broken reputations. Jamal sat in the second row, cap tilted forward, gown unzipped, eyes scanning the space around him with the same quiet calculation he had always carried. He wasn't on the program. He wasn't valedictorian, though everyone knew he could have been. He hadn't wanted the stage. Until the moment came. Madeline Crane, former board chair and newly appointed interim principal, stepped up to the mic. Her smile was forced, her voice steady. We've had a difficult year, she began. We've learned lessons about power, about truth, and about what it means to really educate young people. Before we close, we've invited a student who wasn't supposed to speak today, but perhaps he's the one who should. Murmurs rose through the crowd. Jamal stood. He didn't look at anyone in particular. He just walked, measured, purposeful, to the podium. For a moment, the only sound was the wind rustling through the banners above the field. I wasn't supposed to be here, Jamal said, eyes locked forward. Not on this stage. Not in this school, and definitely not behind this microphone. A pause. When I came to Oak Ridge, I was told, without words, that I didn't belong. That people like me were only here because it looked good on paper, because it checked a box. But the truth is, I didn't come here to be accepted. I came here to watch. More silence. Some students sat stiffly, others leaned forward. I watched the way the system protected some and punished others. I watched how fear passed as tradition. I watched teachers turn their backs when they knew something was wrong. And I waited. I waited for someone to say something, do something. Until I realized I was waiting on no one. Jamal's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. What happened here this year wasn't chaos. It was truth catching up. And it didn't come from rage. It came from patience. Strategy, control. Some of you called it a takedown. Some called it revenge. But I didn't come here to burn Oak Ridge down. I came to remind you what it was supposed to be. Eyes turned now. Even those who had mocked him, even those who had tried to bury him. I'm not proud of everything I had to do. But I'm not ashamed either, because some things don't change by asking nicely. Some things require shaking the ground. He looked down for a beat. Then back up. So, for anyone sitting out there who was told to stay quiet, I see you. For anyone who's ever been underestimated because of how they look or where they're from, you are not alone. He nodded once, then stepped away. No applause followed. Not at first, but then Naomi stood. Then Ms. Medina. Then one by one, more students rose, some clapping, others simply standing in silence. Even some of the staff, hesitant but sincere. And Blake? He watched from the very last row, hands in his lap, face unreadable. When the ceremony ended, Jamal didn't linger. He slipped away before the photos, before the speeches about next steps and Ivy League futures. He walked past the gates, where a black SUV idled quietly. Leonard Kingman stepped out, not in a suit today, but in a gray polo and dark sunglasses. "You ready?" he asked. Jamal paused. "You watched the speech?" "I did." "What did you think?" Leonard cracked the faintest smile. "You're better at this than I ever was." Jamal slid into the back seat and stared out at the school one last time. "So now what?" he asked. Leonard leaned forward from the front. "Now, we see who's next." The car pulled away, tires quiet over wet pavement. Back on campus, Naomi sat in the empty auditorium, flipping through the final edition of the Oak Ridge Observer. The headline read, "A School Rebuilt, by a name they never saw coming." At the bottom was a note she'd written herself. Sometimes, justice doesn't come in the form of a verdict or a fight. Sometimes it walks in silent, waits patiently, and takes the throne when everyone else is too busy laughing. Because Jamal King had never needed to shout, he only needed them to listen. If this story moved you, if it made you think or made you feel seen, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More stories like this are coming, and your support helps bring them to light. Thank you for watching.